This is Maritime Matters with Eric Shine on WGSO AM 990, the program that dives into everything American that comes together at our water's edge.
Where are you? Where are you? B-fi-fo fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. And that's going to be the focus of today's interview. We have a special guest. He's the editor, and he started the, trying to find the Canadian Patriot. It's e-zine, I guess, for want of a better word, but Matthew Ehret can fill us in a little bit more on all of that, but I want to throw out some stuff. He had an article that appeared on Freedom Phoenix that was posted on Lou Rockwell, and he's had a number of really good articles, and if you go to the Canadian Patriot, I'm looking at one now called Financial Blowout Ahead, Lobotomized Economists Clash on the Deck of the Titanic. What amazed me about Matthew and his work, I mean, he's very well written. He's brilliant. He gets into history, tries to remind us of, look, we were here 100 years ago or so. But he points out, and he's Canadian, but he's pointing out that it's the British, German, royal families, the British Empire, that is behind most everything, nothing good, everything bad, that not just the United States is feeling today, but Canada is as well, and so is India and China and most every other country in the world, especially if they're a republic. The British Empire has been using the United States as a banana republic to go around and take out and destroy other republics around the world, or destroy their vision or chance of actually forming a more perfect union under a system of natural law that is of, by, and for the people, much like what's happened in Canada. And before I welcome Matthew to the program, I want to throw out a few things and focus on, the British Empire and or the German British Crown. One, in fact, I'll bring Matthew on because he's going to jump right into it. I'm going to try to give Matthew as much time as possible with just a little guidance up front. And let me go ahead and welcome Matthew to the show. Matthew.
Yeah, hey, Eric, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. Can you give a little bit more bio than I did on who you are and where you come from as far as, not just the Canadian Patriot, but you got your hands in a lot of different things, and you're very active in a very positive and constructive way. So I want the listeners to understand that, and I think coming from your mouth is probably better.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you did a shining job there, but yeah, I guess I could add to that a little bit.
Was that a pun? Was that a pun because of my last name, Shine?
Yeah, I couldn't help that. I'm sorry. I'm guessing that's been played out for you, but yeah, no. If people want to see the Canadian Patriot, they can go to CanadianPatriot.org, which is something I founded in 2012. Basically, because there was no voice geopolitically here in Canada that took into consideration two factors that I found were very important if you were going to make any sense of anything, which was the recognition of the existence of an international financier oligarchy above nation states. So, I mean, how the hell are you going to make a commentary about what Canadian economic policy is or foreign policy is if you ignore that very important fact, which I think is something that any commentator in any part of the world should, if they want to have any, they want to go into battle with a full ammunition. In
right.
fact, they have to be aware of that reality. Number two, that
wait, real quick, you're saying that you have your own deep state in Canada?
Yeah, you're not special. Yeah, every nation's got sort of a deep state characteristic, right? But there's this international thing, this parasitical thing that's a historical process. It's not something that just came out of thin air. It's part of our collective history as beings made
Former
in the image of the
colonies.
Creator. We're and you guys. I mean, the reason why Canada exists is because we failed to take the Ben Franklin challenge. You know, like Ben Franklin was up here in Quebec for several months trying to get us to become the 14th colony to sign on to the Declaration of Independence. And there's a lot of people up here wanted that. You know, the French, which is pretty much all we were, was a French colony from New France. They had just gotten their ass kicked by the British. There was no love there. There was a lot of.
But you also said real quick. I want to interject because you said the same thing about Canada, but you phrased it in a different way. That the only reason that Canada exists is to take back the U.S. and put it back under British control.
Yeah, well, we were set up here because when we failed to accept the challenge and we stayed with the Crown, we became a bastion for a lot of the, you know, what are called the United Empire Loyalists who wanted to stay with the British East India Company and City of London instead of being revolutionary. And they were given some territory up here in Upper and Lower Canada. That's, you know, today's Ontario and Quebec. And since then, it's sort of been a monarchist. It's been the monarchist of the Americas. And if you look throughout the last 250 years of history, unfortunately, and this is a tough pill for a lot of my fellow Canadians to swallow. There's a bit of a cognitive dissonance because there's a real big desire to believe that you're a genuine country, and the mind, it's very difficult to accept the fact that no, it's a British deep state colony, and it's run operations to destroy the United States going back to, geez, I mean, you know, the fact that Wilkes Booth was deployed from Montreal.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
There's a Confederate secret, Confederate secret. It wasn't even a secret thing. It was a Confederate intelligence operation where, he was deployed. He was up here for 6 months. 6 weeks deployed.
So John Wilkes Booth, the guy that killed Lincoln, was taking acting classes in Canada. And I'm kidding, but
okay. Yeah, he was definitely acting. He was acting Iago's part, but being played by the Iagos of London the whole time. He was like just a synthetic personality. But it's the same thing for JFK. You know, like when you do a little bit of digging, like Jim Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans, did a wonderful piece of research published in 1991 called "On the Trail of the Assassins," where he just traces the networks, both to not only the obvious CIA operation that carried out the JFK hit, but also it was intermeshed with the Montreal Permindex corporate. This is basically a company set up as an outgrowth from an assassination a bureau that was set up during World War II that just changed names, changed its outfit a little bit, still run by the same guy, Louis Mortimer Bloomfield.
Well, it's almost like Gladio, which was left in Europe, right?
Similar in many ways, yeah. So it's like, this is the thing. So I set up back to my bio, I set up the journal to sort of take into consideration and provide an analysis of these two things with an awareness that we're sitting on a big, giant global bubble economy that would collapse because that's what bubbles do. And the other thing, I set up the Rising Tide Foundation as sort of a more educational organization with my wife a couple of years back. And I'm the senior fellow of the American University in Moscow, too. So that's a quick thing on my bio.
Cool. Interesting. We're going to go to break here shortly, but I want to throw out before we do, the focus or goal in our interview today is to get people to wake up and understand everything we're dealing with today goes towards the British-German royal crown and what they've been up to for the last several hundred years. But we're out. We're going to break, and we'll be right back with Matthew Ehret.
Hi, this is Clay with Liberty or Lockdown. I'm moving to a new show in the new hour. Join me for What's Your Passion Live to talk about promoting your passion or your business. What's Your Passion is a live show that promotes businesses and podcasts around the city. So join me every Thursday from 12 to 1. Or you can go to www.wypagency.com to get your business or podcast promoted. See you there.
WGSO from the View Parade
to Funchal Square.
Things have changed. WGSO. Do you know what it means to love New Orleans?
Celebrating 75 years, we are the community voice of the Crescent City. WGSO 990 AM.
When disaster strikes, keeping in touch with family and friends and reaching public safety officials is critical. To prepare for power outages caused by severe weather or other conditions, you should create an emergency communication plan. First, check important cell phone contacts, including doctors, veterinarians, utilities, and insurance companies, and note local non-emergency numbers. Store at least one contact as in case of emergency, and make sure that person knows if you have medical issues. Also, make sure everyone in your house knows how to text. Check backup batteries for all your phones and fully charge cell phones, batteries, and rechargers. Sign up to receive mobile phone alerts. Back up and print out important personal data. You might buy a battery-operated, solar-powered, or hand-cranked radio or portable TV to monitor news. Start preparing today. For more info, go to fcc.gov/emergency.
If you are or know of a veteran, first responder, senior citizen, or disabled person who lives in Louisiana and was affected by any hurricane this year, please listen carefully. MDR Disaster Relief and Veterans Outreach, in conjunction with FEMA and local authorities, is providing household items, construction materials, and home repair assistance, all at no charge. To learn more, please contact Joe at 717-623-0164 or Kim at 717-255-9168 or ask your department to call. Again, the numbers are 717-623-0164. That's 717-623-0164 or 717-255-9168. That's 717-255-9168. MDR is here for you.
All right, this is Maritime Matters with Eric Shine and my special guest, Matthew Ehret, and he's he started the Canadian Patriot. I want to say writer, director, producer, whatever, like the man with many hats. Matthew, you there?
Yeah, I am indeed.
Cool. And I want to just real quick, and I don't know if you'll go there on this issue but I believe it's prescient. It goes to the Balfour Agreement and other things that happened in World War II that didn't come from America. It actually came from Britain or the British Empire. But a lot of people throw out the term British Yiddish and that there's a strong connection there. I believe it's like, I think you've mentioned that there are royalists in all, whether they be German, American, British, Israeli, whatever, any and all empires in their day and or nation states today, they have a group, which I would say, like we talked about earlier, the deep state, that is using the republic as if it were a kingdom. And to that, whether you want to go there or not, as far as the British Yiddish connection and the royals, Cecil Rhodes, what he said in 1921 about recapturing the U.S. for the British Empire as its lost colony, status about Canada, like what you had already said about, well, you didn't say this, but get into the whole, basically it's one big privy council now. We did talk prior to this about how the general council or consul in Canada, they were going to do a vote of no confidence against Paul Martin, and the Queen interceded on his behalf and told Parliament in Canada that it could not meet and convene and carry on a vote of no confidence. So, who's in charge? The Crown is on your money, on your public contracts. The comment about only reason Canada exists is to take back the U.S. and put it back under British control. anything and everything that you can, like you've laid out a lot in your articles and stuff. We have far more in common with Canada, and we should, than we do with Britain. And I say that Britain is a bigger enemy to the United States and Canada than any other threat out there. And they are trying to bring us at odds and on the brink of war, if not into a full out, shooting war with China and or Russia or anyone else that they can get us, caught up in a war, because they use the national security umbrella and the land bridge underneath it to move people and agents. And that was the other thing I wanted to get into, or have you get into, was Crown agents and the CFRs and Cecil Rhodes and the Trilateral Commission and Bilderbergs and, Klaus Schwab.
Yeah,
and let me turn it over to you and run with it.
I think we might have to do a recurring series to properly do justice to a lot of these topics. I guess from a top-down perspective, the best place to start would be on the issue of what is this thing called British Empire, because a lot of people, they get the typical idea of a Michael Caine movie of a tight, stuck-up guy in a funny red suit with a funny hat that's deployed to put down, colonial uprisings. And I'm thinking of the Zulu movie. But it's a really naive idea of British Empire. That's not really what it is. That's not what the founding fathers of the United States understood the British Empire to be, because it's more of a multi-headed operation. It's partially it's the British East India Company as an international maritime power controlling the choke points of global trade. It's
real quick, can I throw in on that? Is I want to point out, and I have been trying to prior to this show, that we didn't just stand up against the British, and we didn't create a constitution and Bill of Rights that was towards the government. It was towards everything. Towards the East India Corporation, we stood up against that. Our founders were not big fans of corporations per se, especially international corporations. They were more about mom and pop, businesses, to where and that goes to separation of powers and distribution of wealth and power, and not in a communist fashion.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, if you look at the nature of the British East India Company as an international private power, it ran its own mercenary force, right? It had its own private army. It was a power unto itself, and it was highly enmeshed with the City of London. So just like today, the same thing for 260 years ago, the City of London was the international financial center of the world, controlling the levers of commodities pricings, speculative assets, other things. And they had a little junior outpost, a branch inside of the colonies in the Eastern establishment. This is what founded the basis for Wall Street later on with the Bank of Manhattan, that grew into this parasite that's been there ever since, not as a thing unto itself, but as a branch. Just
real quick, let me throw in too, because
in India,
Matthew,
go ahead.
because you mentioned also, and you can just work this in whenever you get to it, but I just don't want to forget it, is Rhodes Scholar, because Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. Amy Coney Barrett, the new Supreme Court justice that Trump just nominated and is now a Supreme Court justice, she's a Rhodes Scholar. If you could work in the whole Rhodes Scholar deal when you get to it or whatever, but please continue.
Yeah, we can do that, sure. So to sort of set the context a little bit, it's an intelligence operation. Back then it had a global intelligence capability, that it was sort of a carryover of a lot of the best techniques, and I say best in the loosest way, right? Techniques developed by Venetian intelligence. So it had that aspect to it. So it's kind of like, this is what the Five Eyes it's not just intelligence, right? It's enmeshed with the financial cartels, with the City of London, with the modern international sort of banking financial oligarchical complex. It's one thing, though, with different aspects to it. And that's what the U.S. was able to create a successful, for the first time in the world, it was a successful revolt that established something better in its place. Other revolts had been attempted, but were put down. Now to get to
like
higher
France
context, was that? Yeah,
I said like France.
And that was a sabotage that turned from the first 6 months of the French Revolution were very positive. There were a lot of Ben Franklin's key allies, like the Marquis de Lafayette, Lavoisier, Jean-Sylvain Bailly,
Thomas
the
Paine.
mayor of Paris. Thomas Paine went up there. But these guys were all in the leadership position organizing the Tennis Court Oath in 1789, and that was modeled on the best aspects of the U.S. Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It was a great document, but it was, that whole operation, I've written extensively about that, was sabotaged by British intelligence with a lot of their networks like Jacques Necker, more Genoese bankers who were established in the French oligarchy who just basically turned it into a bloody Jacobin mob. Kind of like what they later did with the Bolshevik Revolution to overthrow the czars, and we've seen that in more recent years as color revolutionary tactics to overthrow governments you don't like. That's been more refined, but it's the same formula ultimately. You take a mob that has been abused, and then you just channel, you eliminate any potential competent leadership, so that there's a vacuum. You get a rabble rouser like Robespierre or Danton or Marat on the payroll, usually of British intelligence. You'll find the back channels. And they'll just turn that mob into a battering ram against any type of nation that you don't like. And ultimately, after a few years of civil war bloodletting, happened, there was no leadership anymore, and there was only a vacuum for Napoleon, who was also being bankrolled by the Rothschilds to fill up, and that ran roughshod over 20 years in Europe. So,
right, and then it also turns into a Night of the Long Knives initially as well, which is basically going after all the intelligentsia, like you're saying, to where it's just a bunch of mindless people who do what they're told and, destroy everything.
Yeah, exactly. And part of that was, they used the excuse of Napoleon to create the Congress of Vienna, this thing that Henry Kissinger loved so much. His first book was written on the Congress of Vienna of 1815 that established a complete expulsion of any patriots in Europe and the killing of any type of intellectuals that had ideas like Thomas Paine or Schiller,
All right, we're going to break. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah. Continue on with that thought right after the break. This is a long one, bottom of the hour.
Over the last 75 years, New Orleans has gone through many changes, and so has WGSO. From our early beginnings in 1946, broadcasting from the Jung Hotel, being home to Papa Stappa in the 1950s, being a music station, talking biz radio to speaking easy New Orleans style, you, our loyal listeners, have been here every step of the way with WGSO. It's now our 75th anniversary, and we are so proud to have you here with us to celebrate. So we're going to celebrate all year long to show our gratitude to you and make 2021 our most successful year yet. And we will also continue to bring programs that appeal to people of all backgrounds. So from all of us at WGSO, we want to say thank you for making us the community voice of the Crescent City.
A powerful threat calls for a greater response.
When there's a battle, bring strength.
When there's a problem, seek answers.
When there is doubt, give hope.
Not tomorrow.
Not in a few years.
But right now.
Some battles must be faced together. Cancer fighters stand up to cancer every day. And you can be part of this battle too.
Visit standuptocancer.org to learn more.
Together, we can save lives.
Louisiana Radio Network. I'm Brooke Thorington. Now that Governor Edwards has vetoed the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which would prohibit transgender girls and women from participating on female sports teams, will we see a veto session? Political consultant Lionel Rainey says House Speaker Clay Schnecknider supports a veto session.
When you have the Speaker of the House come out and immediately make a statement that says he's in favor of a veto override session and of overriding this veto, that's a big, big, big sign.
Both chambers must agree to return for a veto session. Governor Edwards has signed into law legislation providing more oversight for Title IX offices on college campuses. Franklin Senator Beth Meisel's legislation closes loopholes found in previous campus safety policies and now allows for employees who fail to report sexual misconduct to be terminated.
The administration has the power power to terminate anybody that is not following through the processes. That was something that has not been in policy in the past, and we wanted to make sure that option was available.
LRN.
It's the first day of the first grade, and she found a new best friend. It's a laid-back Sunday afternoon you wish would never end.
The homemade taste of Bluebell and good friends gathered round. The good old days are being made right now.
Bluebell introduced the original cookies and cream ice cream. So every time you dig into that familiar creamy vanilla ice cream that's loaded with chunks of chocolate cream cookies, you can say thanks. You're more than welcome.
The good old days are being made right now.
The good old days are being made right now.
Look for Bluebell ice cream at your local grocer and pick up your favorite flavor today.
We are having a party. It's WGSO's 75th anniversary party, and we're looking for all of you to come celebrate with us. If you're a local business, take advantage of this opportunity to be a sponsor for our big 75th anniversary party. We have great sponsorship packages offering tremendous benefits for our partners. If you're interested, contact me, Jeff Cruere, at jeff@wgso.com or 504-669-6076.
Hi, I'm Clay.
And this is Hawk.
Join us for Liberty or Lockdown.
Thursday at 5 p.m. right here on WGSO 990 AM.
This is David Jeremiah inviting you to join me here on Talk Radio 990 every weekday at either 5:30 or 6:30 a.m.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives with your gifts. Your heart could keep beating. Your kidneys could keep filtering. And your intestines could keep on digesting for others. And that's not all. You can improve the lives of 50 more people as an eye and tissue donor, restoring sight and health. And you're not just helping out the person receiving the transplant. You're touching whole families with your life-saving gift. Register in minutes. Just go to organdonor.gov. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Sign up today. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
More and more Americans are listening on American Ground. Listen each Saturday from noon to 1 p.m. with Louis R. Avalone and Stephen Parr.
Back, and this is the broadcast going to who and what is behind everything we're seeing and dealing with that is not good today, whether it be the Federal Reserve System, our current monetary system that is not national, it's an international banking system run by an international banking cartel out of England, London, City of London, our civil war and the aftermath from that, the current civil war, which is, being run by the British-German crown. The status of our U.S. merchant marine, 97% of international cargo, and this goes to Cecil Rhodes. And I know when I give it back over to Matthew here and let him run with it, he knows about Rhodesia, which was created for false flag and or flag of convenience. Privatization, taxes. We didn't have internal taxes before 1930. 100% of our federal government was run off of tariffs. This gets into the Coast Guard, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, which is a British even the Federal Fusion Centers, which I've spoken of, gets into this. But I want to turn it back over to Matthew ASAP. Let him run with it. This is Matthew Ehret, a journalist who started the Canadian Patriot. It's a sovereign voice in a chorus of nations. Basically, we're in the midst of a new enlightenment. And Matthew, welcome back to the show, and please run with it.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Well, I heard you brought up Cecil Rhodes, and I think that's a great jump-off point, just to go into the second, half of the segment that we're talking about, because you really can't make sense of anything of the past 120 years without really understanding how the Rhodes Trust, what Cecil Rhodes did or was assigned to do, because he was kind of like a George Soros character in his own day. He had hired handlers, but he was the sociopathic, racist governor of Rhodesia, and played a major role in suppressing some Republican movements like the Transvaal Republican uprisings in the 1890s that led to the Boer Wars. Completely insane. But he created something. Basically, he took his diamond fortunes, he made a massive amount of money with Rothschild. Yeah, this led into De Beers. And he directed through his wills, which people can just read the mandate for this thing, when he died in 1902, to direct all of this money into the creation of two things, which was, one, an international network of think tanks called the Round Table Movement in every single, what later became the Five Eyes sort of Anglosphere, with the mandate of recapturing the United States and reestablishing the British Empire as under a new form of world government. And he's very clear in his...
The New World Order.
That's essentially what it is. So these roundtable movements were integrated with, number two, the creation of a scholarship program that became the Rhodes Scholarship Program. You brought up
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Bill Clinton. There was a surge of Rhodes Scholars in the 90s when he came in 92. But also, a lot of these...
Amy Coney Barrett.
That's one of many. You got Susan Rice. She came in with Bill Clinton. Strobe Talbot, who ran the Brookings Institute and also played a big role in Russiagate, bringing in his own dodgy dossiers from Brookings that were used in tandem with Sir Richard Dearlove and Christopher Steele to basically create this whole fraud of the 2016 to 20. It's still ongoing in some ways, but Strobe Talbot was a big part of it, who oversaw the rape of Russia under shock therapy of the 90s. But this is what's come back under Biden as well. There's a huge surge of Rhodes Scholars, from Susan Rice to Jake Sullivan to Eric Lander, the science czar of the United States.
We have czars now here in the United States. Real quick, though, I wanted to mention it was basically the British royal family that gave us Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, but as a pause there, because one thing I just want to get at before, that's a whole can of worms. One thing is that people often are aware, who are a bit more savvy on geopolitics and history, they are often aware of the nefarious role of the Council on Foreign Relations, but they're not aware that the Council on Foreign Relations was a creation. It was the British Roundtable movement in America, because they were setting each, in, like I said, the whole Anglosphere, different think tanks up. But it was a little bit too obvious to call it the Royal Institute for American Affairs, which is what they were calling it in Canada and Australia and Britain, a.k.a. Chatham House. It changed it, so they had to give it the name Council on Foreign Relations. But it was always staffed with Fabian Society fanatics from the London School of Economics and Rhodes Scholars. And so basically that was what Cecil Rhodes wanted. It was to create a church of the British Empire where you could indoctrinate talented, smart, young elites from different parts of the colony, give them money if they don't have money, to get a good British brainwashing in the corridors of Oxford, in whatever field they wanted, and then redeploy them back into whatever part of the world that they were from, and facilitate their rise in influence in whatever. So whether it's in the private sector, whether it's in government, academia, media, you name it, they would then create sort of it's called permeation theory. That's how George Bernard Shaw, who was operating the Fabian Society branch of this operation, because there was two think tanks. There was the Round Table movement and there was the Fabian Society. They're interconnected. They both worked in tandem with different specializations. One's Oxford-based, the other one's London School of Economics. Both have the same function, though. Like, for example, in Canada, just a quick segue, we have the the Canadian Fabian Society was set up in 1932 as a way to create a scientific dictatorship as a solution to the Great Depression here in Canada. It was set up by 6 Rhodes Scholars. So it's the same thing, you know. Now, unfortunately,
disciples.
Yeah, basically, it's glazed over cultish little disciples. Yeah, they're not giving you sort of education you get from a community college in Chicago or something. You know, it's a different way. It's a different part of their mind they're allowed to access, but it has to be very disciplined in a sense and committed to allegiance to their caste. So it's very ideological. Chrystia Freeland up here in Canada, who's sort of the power behind the bubblehead pretty boy running the, who we're told is our prime minister. Chrystia Freeland is a Rhodes Scholar, for example. Mark Carney is not a Rhodes Scholar, but he did go to Oxford, and they're pretty much cut from the same cloth. Just to say, right? So you brought up Hitler, I brought up the Great Depression. The Great Depression, and this is something which, my newest article touches on this repeat of a blowout of the financial system and a wealth transfer under this Great Reset idea today. Because again, it's a contrived blowout. There's a pinprick that's being set up to blow out a hyperinflated bubble economy that's sitting upon unpayable debts to the wazoo. And as soon as you get a deleveraging, a default on any of the underlying debts, whether it's in whether it's in the overvalued real estate bubble, whether it's in the bundled student debts, automotive debts, commercial debts, whatever it is, it's an everything bubble. There's so many points of potential triggers. You're going to get a deleveraging of all of the derivatives, the speculative contracts built out of thin air, and that's sort of like what we saw in 1929 was unbounded speculation, deregulation in the 1920s under Coolidge, which was really under Andrew Mellon, his Treasury Secretary, that pushed a mass deregulation on behalf of J.P. Morgan and the Rockefeller power. And when the time was right, they popped the bubble. And when they popped the bubble, anybody who was not on the J.P. Morgan preferred clients list basically got screwed. And anybody on the list was able to sell early and then buy up pennies on the dollar, and you had a big wealth transfer. And the pain was a shock therapy. Sort of like what they did to Russia in the 1990s is what they did to America and the world and Canada in 1989, and sort of make people starve, make them afraid, accept things as solutions like fascism that a democratic people who love liberty never normally accept under normal circumstances. Right?
Biden would never allow that to happen. I'm kidding, tongue in cheek. I was kidding. I was saying Biden would never allow that to happen under his watch. Except he doesn't have a watch.
It's an example of just a synthetic shell of a nothing, right? Like there's no substance behind the machine. So they like using little wind-up dolls like that. Trudeau is another one. That's where they get along really well. Obama was maybe a little bit more eloquent, but another wind-up doll. There's nothing behind the eyeballs as substance. That was robbed from them when they were kids. That's unfortunate, but whatever. So at the time, the plan was here in Canada.
We got a minute to the next break, so just to let you know. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, the eugenics-based dictatorship as a solution that was yeah.
Can you hear him? You're cutting out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and take over into the break.
Yeah.
We are with. Okay, now I hear you. We are with Matthew Ehret of the Canadian Patriot. He is I'd almost say he's a true-blooded American, but he's a Canadian. But he realizes that what's going on in the United States, it follows in Canada. Very same thing, that the British Empire is not only playing here in the United States with its agents or crown agents, but it's doing the same thing in Canada, if not around the world. And we need to be aware of our history, and that's one of the reasons Matthew's on the program. We're going to break. We'll be right back and let Matthew wrap it up. I wish we had more time. That hour was gone by pretty
Group, the Mason Collective, NOLA Title Group, and ARC Insurance Consultants are the ones to call on for all of your home needs. Whether it's mortgages, closing, sales, or insurance, they take care of your home needs, and now they've come together to help take care of the needs of our beloved New Orleans music community by partnering with Bougainvillea Productions and Soul Project NOLA for Fridays from the Funky Uncle. Fridays from the Funky Uncle is a free webcast live from the one-of-a-kind Mardi Gras float, the Funky Uncle Lounge, that features features New Orleans musicians playing live music combined with interviews and outreach news to raise money for the entertainment community of New Orleans that have been impacted by COVID-19. You can join in the funky fun time by simply going to www.funkyuncle.live every Friday night at 7 p.m. Coming to the Funky Uncle Lounge on June 25th, it's Randy Jackson of Zebra. And on June 30th, Tribal Gold. For more information on how you can support Fridays from the Funky Uncle, go to funkyuncle.live.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Jones Gumbo Hour. I'm your host, founder, and owner of the TLGHL3C. I'm very excited about having the opportunity once again to have a positive and thought-provoking dialogue with you as we inform and educate each other on various topics or gumbo ingredients from the business, academic, alumni, workforce, youth, and of course the sporting arena. I will be here every Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. providing informative nuggets for you and yours. Please call in with your questions or add your bowl of gumbo at 504-556-9696. so that we can add to today's pot of gumbo.
World-renowned Brennan's Restaurant is steeped in wine, and for the first time in 70 years, its award-winning wine program is led by an all-woman team. I'm Braith Tidwell, the wine director at Brennan's, and my gifted team of certified sommeliers stand ready to pair the perfect bottle from our vast cellar of 1,400 selections and 15,000 bottles with your fabulous meal. Brennan's fabled two-story cellar has it all, including a deep collection of French Burgundies, limited-run California vintages, and over 100 selections of champagne and sparkling wines.
WGSO across the Gulf South, a great new way. WGSO.
Celebrating 75 years, we are the community voice of the Crescent City. WGSO 990 AM.
Hey y'all, the Beat Exchange has a new time slot on WGSO 990 AM in New Orleans at 7 p.m. on Mondays. The Beat Exchange with Barbara Hoover, Mondays at 7 p.m.
All right, we're back, and I'm looking straight at. I got feedback, Priyanka. Financial blowout ahead. Lobotomized economists clash on the deck of the Titanic. June 15th, 2021, by Matthew Ehret. And I want to welcome Matthew back to the show and let him clean everything up and pull it all together and basically let him run. Go ahead, Matthew. Hello. Matthew.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, it's all yours, Matthew.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me on the radio?
Yeah, you're on. You're live.
Okay, I'm just using a different headset right now. Okay. Yeah, I just cut off on my phone, so sorry about that.
No worries.
So I guess, yeah, to pick up where we left off is what we'd like to do, right?
Yeah, to basically pull it all together to get everybody to focus, forget about China. I mean, China's important, but everything going on with China, everything going on at the border, everything going on around the
Okay, so yeah, here's the thing that people have to
is being orchestrated by crown agents of the German British Crown.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing to keep in mind is we're at the end of one system, and there's a fight over who and what will be the new system, and what will this new system serve. There's currently, as far as we could see, two opposing paradigms, one of which is a unipolar one world government, anti-nation state, anti-human being dynamic, which wants, this is when people think Great Reset, Davos, Green New Deal, or that's all basically the unipolar NATO one world hegemony stuff, where nation states no longer exist and people have to get nice and depopulated fast. The other view is what we see coming out of the different multipolar alliance, which is pro-nation state, it's pro-population growth, massive big projects, and the idea is, yeah, the new Silk Road is one aspect of that. There's 138 nations that have signed on to the BR. It's otherwise called the Belt and Road Initiative. There's problems. I mean, I'm not saying anybody's angelic here, but this is what the Russian, China, and increasingly Iran alliance has been more and more about, which is based on the nation state driving the control of central banking, not private financiers running the nation's central banks, and long-term credit being geared towards increasing the national productive powers of labor. The extension of manufacturing, education to Africa and other countries. That's something that the U.S. used to do a long time ago, but we haven't done it in the United States or Canada for many, many decades because we've been captured over the dead bodies of many patriots who did do that. Like, McKinley assassinated, but he was pushing for that internationally in 1901. JFK, FDR, who basically fought the Great Reset program of 1932 in London, which was an attempt to create a one world bankers dictatorship run out of London back then in the League of Nations. He sabotaged.
Kind of like Trump did with going to Davos.
Very similar. When Trump was in Davos, he threw over the chessboard and basically said, we have to defend civilization's greatest traditions. We have to defend the Renaissance principles, pro-population growth. He was really good on that. So that's sort of what was done when Franklin Roosevelt pulled the United States out of all arrangements with the London crowd and broke up the London Conference. And then he went and declared war on the Wall Street banks that were the British arm inside of the U.S. finance system by bringing in what's that?
I was saying the American banking was trying to think Kuhn and Loeb, and the other one's Averell Harriman and
which Prescott Bush worked for and got caught trading. All of these guys were heavy pushing for eugenics, and they wanted to be part of a trifecta one world government with a fascist regime controlling the North American and South American jurisdiction. The idea would be Mussolini and Hitler would sort of carve up with the British. Keep in mind, the king was still pro-Nazi back in the 30s. So was Neville Chamberlain. So the idea was to have a new world order governed by bankers at the top, fascist enforcers at the a little bit lower down, and that's what Roosevelt went to war with. And he broke up the banks. He put a lot of bankers in prison who manufactured the Great Depression and the bubbles of the 1920s. And he forced credit to move outside of the Federal Reserve and instead through the Reconstruction Finance Corporation as sort of a national bank to fund big projects that pulled people out of poverty and got the U.S. into a situation where it could put down this Frankenstein monster that these Wall Street and London financiers had been funding. So, I mean, this Frankenstein thing was, Hitler wanted the New World Order to be something that he was a co-partner in and not a banker's boy.
But the bankers weren't on top. It was still the royal families that the bankers were working for, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, the bankers, and I use this as a mode of communication because people just sometimes have a difficult time getting it. But yes, that's right. The bankers are sort of mercenaries used by a higher power.
Agents. Right.
Crown agents are an aspect of that. That's still a powerful part of what's keeping Africa in a dark age is the Crown Agents
Rhodes Scholars.
The Rhodes Scholars are permeating everything. There's been about 3,000 or 4,000 of them so far in the past century, and it's a very active thing. Brookings is a branch of the CFR at this point, which has been completely behind Russiagate, like I said earlier, under Strobe Talbot and others. But it's an international beast, and it's ultimately the same structure as what ran the families of the Roman Empire, of the Babylonian Empire, and it's sort of like a parasite that just sort of moves from location to location, but it doesn't really create anything new. It can just sort of destroy good things that are happening elsewhere.
Well, it's a deep state in every other country, because what they're trying to do now, and this is in The Shield of Achilles by Philip Bobbitt, War, Peace, in the Course of History, is they're moving from the nation state, and every time they do this and have a change of state, it's like a general bankruptcy, to the new corporate state or market state, same thing.
Yeah, shareholder capitalism, as Klaus Schwab says. That's what also Zbigniew Brzezinski, when he set up the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller III, he wrote a book a manifesto for it called the Between Two Ages. And that was 1970. And he's very clear that the future age that we want to bring into being will have no place for nation states, family traditions, belief in right and wrong, and will instead
human rights, civil rights, natural law.
Yeah, all of that stuff is incompatible with the view of what he literally says: the nation state as a fundamental unit of man's organized life has ceased to be the principal creative force. International banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concepts of the nation state. That's a Zbigniew Brzezinski, 1970.
And that was in which article of yours?
That is the how the Trilateral Commission drove a bankers' coup across America. But you can read the book itself online, Between Two Ages, on a technotronic era. But this becomes the foundation for what takes over with Carter. With all of these different Trilateral Commission freaks, there's like 8 of them who become executives under Carter, including Volcker, who does the most to really drive the U.S. economy into hell and create a climate only friendly for big corporations to win over small businesses. Yeah.
When Reagan came into office, the first thing he said was, "I want to devalue the dollar." Who does that? Carries on an unlawful tax rate.
You could say that there was mass inflation going up to 12.5% by 1980 and stuff. That was bad, but there's other ways of dealing with that did involve destroying your entire productive base of small and medium enterprises. You didn't have to jack up the interest rates to 20% to stop the inflation. There were other things you could have done.
They're doing now.
Was that like they're doing now?
They're doing the same thing now and basically destroying the economy and people's lives and small business. And
yeah, because the other way to end inflation is to increase real productivity, the way Franklin Roosevelt did with the New Deal, or the way that China's doing with the Belt and Road. If you increase abundance and quality of productivity, then you can also increase the buying power of your dollar and undo inflation. If you're only a mathematician or ivory tower freak economist, you might want to just increase interest rates, which sees up capital flows to small and medium enterprises, so that you could say maybe inflation's going to go down, but so will your productive base. You're gonna cannibalize yourself, and then in that climate, only big multinational corporations can survive those interest rates and insurance premiums, and will eat up everybody else.
Snap everything up. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Bianca, how much time do we have left? Okay. We got 10 seconds, Matthew. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
Give the CanadianPatriot.com. What is CanadianPatriot.org?
CanadianPatriot.org and RisingTideFoundation.net.
And I want to have you back on.
990 AM has recently become recognized as an official 501c3 nonprofit organization capable of accepting tax-deductible donations. So, in commemoration of our 75th anniversary, the station is launching a 75 for 75 campaign with the goal of raising $75,000 in 2021. The funds that are raised will be dedicated to help the station fulfill our broadcast mission and satisfy any equipment needs that arise. These donations are especially important because, unlike most radio stations in New Orleans, WGSO is independent, locally owned and operated, and not part of a national broadcasting conglomerate. To donate, go to WGSO.com and click on the Donate button on the front page. Help us to continue to be the community voice of the Crescent City.
Let's talk about America. Not taxes or tweets or the issues that divide us, but how incredible our country is. Left, right, up, down, state lines to winding coastlines. Whether you come home to a crowded city street, tree-lined suburb, or sleepy small town, everyone deserves to live in a clean, green, and thriving community. And we all share in the responsibility to create beauty that ripples from one neighborhood to another and one block to the next. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working with millions of people just like you to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify our communities. Because every mindful action and sustainable habit has a positive impact, and it all adds up. Learn how you can join Keep America Beautiful at KAB.org. Together, we can do beautiful things.
For the best in politics and news of the day, catch Jeff Cruere and call in Monday through Friday from 7 to 11 a.m. on WGSO 990 AM New Orleans.
USA Radio News.